Chenise Williams stood at the kitchen window of her modest home in Brownsville, Brooklyn, watching the setting sun paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. At 32, she had achieved what many considered the American dream: a loving husband, 2 beautiful children, and a fulfilling career as a social worker. Her husband, Marcus, 34, was a rising star at a local non-profit organization dedicated to empowering underprivileged youth in their community. Their life seemed perfect from the outside, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood often overlooked by the rest of New York City. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Marcus's younger brother, Tyrone, had moved in with them 6 months ago. At 28, Tyrone was still trying to find his footing in life. A talented musician, he played gigs at local clubs and bars, dreaming of his big break while relying on his brother's generosity. Tyrone's presence in their home had started innocently enough. He needed a place to stay after a bad breakup. And Marcus, always the protective older brother, had offered their spare room without hesitation. Chenise had agreed, thinking it would be temporary. As weeks turned into months, Chenise found herself drawn to Tyrone's carefree spirit and passion for music. His laughter filled the house, bringing a lightness that she hadn't realized was missing. Late-night conversations over cups of tea became their secret ritual. Stolen moments when Marcus was working late or the kids were asleep. One night, as they sat on the back porch, the warm summer breeze carrying the faint sounds of distant traffic, Tyrone's hand brushed against hers. The touch sent a jolt through Chenise, awakening feelings she thought long buried. She pulled away, but the spark had ignited something neither could ignore. Their relationship deepened in secret, stolen kisses in shadowy corners of the house, lingering glances across the dinner table. Guilt gnawed at Chenise, but the thrill of their forbidden connection was intoxicating. Marcus, consumed by his work and oblivious to the growing tension in his home, continued to push himself harder at the nonprofit. He was determined to make a difference in his community, often staying late at the office or attending community events. As summer faded into fall, Chenise and Tyrone's affair intensified. They began meeting outside the house, in parking lots, at secluded spots in Prospect Park, anywhere they could snatch a few moments alone. They were careful, or so they thought. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially in close-knit communities like Brownsville. Marcus's colleague, Keisha, spotted Chenise and Tyrone holding hands at a cafe in downtown Brooklyn. Torn between loyalty to her friend and the weight of her discovery, Keisha struggled with what to do. After days of internal conflict, Keisha decided to tell Marcus. She invited him for coffee after work, her heart heavy with the burden of what she was about to reveal. "Marcus," Keisha began, her voice trembling slightly, "there's something you need to know. I saw Chenise and Tyrone together last week. They were holding hands, Marcus. It looked like more than just family." Marcus sat in stunned silence, the world around him fading to a dull roar. He couldn't believe it. His wife and his brother? The 2 people he trusted most in the world? That night, Marcus returned home early, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He found Chenise in the kitchen, preparing dinner as if it were any other evening. Tyrone was in the living room, strumming his guitar softly. "We need to talk," Marcus said, his voice low and controlled. "All of us." The tension in the room was palpable as Marcus confronted them with what he knew. Chenise broke down, tears streaming down her face as she confessed to the affair. Tyrone, unable to meet his brother's eyes, confirmed everything. Marcus listened in silence, his world crumbling around him. When they finished, he stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked out of the house without a word. For days, Marcus disappeared. He didn't go to work, didn't answer his phone. Chenise was frantic, torn between worry for her husband and guilt over her actions. Tyrone, realizing the magnitude of their betrayal, packed his bags and left, unable to face the destruction he had helped cause. On the fourth day, Marcus returned. His eyes were red-rimmed, his clothes disheveled. He had been staying at a motel, trying to make sense of his shattered life. As he walked into the house, Chenise rushed to him, relief and fear warring on her face. But Marcus's expression was cold, distant. He brushed past her and headed straight for their bedroom. Chenise followed, her heart pounding. "Marcus, please," she began. "Can we talk about this?" Marcus turned to face her, his eyes burning with a mixture of pain and anger. "Talk? What's there to talk about, Chenise? You and my brother betrayed me. You destroyed our family." Chenise flinched at his words, but pressed on. "I know what we did was wrong. I'm so sorry, Marcus. Please, can we try to work through this? For the kids, if nothing else?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Work through this? How do you suggest we do that, Chenise? How do I forget that the two people I trusted most in this world stabbed me in the back?" As they argued, their voices rising, neither noticed their 10-year-old daughter Zuri standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Mommy? Daddy?" Zuri's small voice cut through their argument like a knife. Chenise and Marcus turned, shocked to see their daughter witnessing their fight. Chenise quickly wiped her tears and tried to smile. "It's okay, baby. Mommy and Daddy are just having a grown-up talk. Why don't you go play in your room?" Zuri hesitated, her eyes darting between her parents. Marcus knelt down and hugged her tightly. "Everything's going to be okay, princess. I promise." As Zuri reluctantly left, Marcus turned back to Chenise. "We need to figure this out, for the kids' sake. But right now, I can't even look at you." The next few weeks were a blur of tense silences and awkward interactions. Marcus threw himself into his work, often not returning home until late at night. Chenise tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for the children, but the strain was evident. One night, as Marcus sat alone in the living room, nursing a glass of whiskey, a plan began to form in his mind. A dark, twisted plan born of pain and betrayal. He would make them pay for what they had done to him, to their family. Marcus began to lay the groundwork for his revenge. He started by reaching out to Tyrone, pretending to want to reconcile. Tyrone, racked with guilt, eagerly agreed to meet. Over the next few weeks, Marcus carefully manipulated both Chenise and Tyrone. He led Chenise to believe he was willing to work on their marriage, while simultaneously encouraging Tyrone to pursue his music career more aggressively. As his plan progressed, Marcus became more erratic. His colleagues at the non-profit noticed changes in his behavior. Mood swings, moments of intense focus, followed by periods of distraction. But they chalked it up to stress from his personal life. On a chilly November evening, Marcus put his plan into action. He invited Tyrone over, claiming he wanted to have a brother-to-brother talk. When Tyrone arrived, Marcus offered him a drink, a glass of expensive whiskey laced with a potent sedative. As Tyrone began to feel the effects of the drug, Marcus led him to the garage. There, in a carefully staged scene, Marcus committed the unthinkable. He took Tyrone's life, using a knife that he knew his brother often used to cut fruit. With cold precision, Marcus planted evidence: Tyrone's guitar pick, strands of his hair, even going so far as to use Tyrone's hand to leave fingerprints around the garage. He then called Chenise, his voice shaking with feigned panic, telling her to come home immediately. When Chenise arrived, she found Marcus kneeling beside Tyrone's body, sobbing. The garage was a scene of chaos, overturned tools, splatters of blood, and in the center of it all, Tyrone, motionless. I found him like this," Marcus stammered, his performance convincing. I think someone broke in. Oh God, Chenise, he's gone." Chenise's scream echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Neighbors came running, and soon the sound of sirens filled the air. Detective James Carter arrived on the scene, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. As he began his investigation, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The evidence seemed too perfect, too neatly laid out, and Marcus's behavior, while outwardly distraught, had an undertone that Detective Carter couldn't quite put his finger on. As the investigation progressed, inconsistencies began to emerge. Security footage from a neighbor's camera showed Marcus's car leaving and returning multiple times on the night of the murder, contradicting his statement that he had been home all evening. Detective Carter dug deeper, uncovering a trail of digital breadcrumbs that Marcus had unknowingly left behind. Searches on his work computer for terms related to untraceable poisons and crime scene staging raised red flags. 2 weeks after Tyrone's death, Detective Carter had enough evidence to make an arrest. He arrived at the Williams home early in the morning, accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. Marcus answered the door, his face a mask of grief that quickly turned to shock as Detective Carter read him his rights. Chenise watched in horror as her husband was handcuffed and led to a waiting police car. As Marcus was driven away, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. The perfect life Chenise thought she had, the family she had risked everything for, had been nothing but an illusion. Now, with Tyrone gone and Marcus facing murder charges, she was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. In the quiet of their now empty home, Chenise hugged her children close, wondering how they would ever recover from this tragedy. The community that had once looked up to them now whispered behind closed doors, their story a cautionary tale of how quickly life can unravel. As news of Marcus's arrest spread through Brownsville, neighbors gathered on stoops and in corner stores, trying to make sense of the tragedy that had befallen a family many had admired. The Williams story would be told and retold, a stark reminder that even the most picture-perfect lives can hide the darkest secrets.